Hello. I would like to welcome each of you watching this video who are actual and prospective coaches of the Massachusetts Future Problem-Solving Teams, or individuals, who participate in our booklet competition. Sitting with me is Larry Uchel, who is the president of our organization and who, like me, has been a parent and coach of several very successful teams, and who is also a long-term evaluator. This video is designed to help coaches improve the quality of their student teams' booklets. We know that each of you understand that the Future Problem-Solving program is one which helps students develop skills in critical and creative thinking, collaborative work, research, and writing by employing the 6-step future problem-solving model to solve complex issues. We also know that participants in the booklet competition have more fun and yet more involved in the MFPS program if they understand this program better and their booklet evaluations and scores are higher.
In order to achieve this goal, the board feels it is important to provide coaches with the tools to help train their teams in the 6-step future problem-solving process so that their teams will produce higher quality booklets. To achieve this, it is important for coaches to understand the various criteria which our evaluators are looking for in each step of the 6-step process, which is used to produce booklets. Without this understanding, the coaches are not in a good position to train their teams to be competitive. Our evaluators feel the teams can vastly improve their booklets if coaches can train their teams in understanding the basics of what evaluators are looking for when they are assessing the booklet work product. Both Beverly and I have seen our teams become significantly more energetic, excited, and motivated if they are given the proper tools which allow them to harness their creativity and analytical powers.
This video will focus on the first 3 steps of the 6-step future problem-solving model. We will look at the future scene that was used in last year's qualifying state bowl, which hopefully each of you have read before you turned on this video. If that is not the case, why don't you pause the video at this time and take a look at last year's future scene for the MFPS qualifying state bowl.
As coaches, you are aware that the future scene relates to a topic that has been pre-chosen prior to working on each future scene, which is prepared by the Future Problem-Solving program. It is expected that each team will have done research on this topic area and possibly will have done some practice exercises in preparation for working on the future scene. Of course, no coach and no team knows in advance what the future scene will cover, so the teams must prepare themselves by getting general knowledge of the topic so that they will be able to handle any aspect of the topic that might be covered by the particulars of the future scene.
For last year's qualifying state bowl, the topic was propaganda. This topic generally related to the possibility of individuals, governments, or other groups attempting to manipulate the perspective and choices of individuals through the use of communications containing selective facts and/or arguments which are aimed at influencing and changing the attitude of the community towards some cause or position. In some instances, selected messages are used to produce emotional rather than a rational response, and often these messages have poor or non-existent reasoning. Propaganda shares techniques with advertising and public relations. For the purpose of our video, we will assume that a middle school team of 4 was in the process of trying to qualify for the state bowl by entering the qualifying state bowl, and this team was presented with this future scene.
As we know, each team has 2 hours to complete the 6-step evaluation booklet. Prior to working on the first step, which involves writing out up to 16 challenges posed by the future scene, each team member must read the future scene and generate their own individual concepts of challenges that they can individually think up before they present their thoughts to the entire team. Ideally, when the team has completed step 1, they will have created 16 challenges covering as many different future problem-solving target categories as possible prior to determining each challenge. Each individual team members must read carefully the final paragraph of the future scene in order to understand the target directive, which must be addressed by each of the 16 Step 1 challenges and each of the 16 Step 3 solutions. If a challenge or a solution does not fall within the parameters of the directive contained in the final paragraph, that challenge will not receive any credit in the booklet scoring. So each challenge and each solution must be selected so that it will fall within the directive parameters contained in the last paragraph of the future scene. In the middle school future scene, which was used in the qualifying state bowl, the final paragraph directive is as follows. Since propaganda bombards Thai-poor citizens from a multitude of sources, consider challenges within these situations, select an underlying problem addressing a major propaganda issue for Thai-poor citizens and develop an action plan.
It is clear that the directive that was used in the last paragraph of this future scene is quite broad, but it does require that challenges and solutions must deal with a major propaganda issue, which the citizens of Thai-poor are facing in this future scene. With this directive, a challenge that only dealt with a problem concerning lack of food or another topic that did not touch on a propaganda issue faced by the citizens of Thai-poor would not get credit because it does not address this charge in the last paragraph. In order to try to cover as many different categories as possible, it might be helpful if individual team members, when thinking about challenges individually, attempted to focus on certain pre-assigned specific challenge topics, like basic needs, defense, recreation, law or justice, physical health, etc., so that all of the categories could be spread out amongst the various team members. Prior to having a group discussion, individuals might note down their challenge concepts in 2 or 3 word phrases so that they are prepared for the group discussion.
Do you remember the movie Tron? In that movie, rather than playing a video game called Tron, the protagonist was actually drawn into the video game itself and became an active participant, like the character Mario in the various Mario video games. As coaches, it is important to impart to each of your team members that as they read the future scene, each team member needs to actually try to imagine themselves actually living and experiencing all of the obstacles and elements posed by the future scene as if they were actually drawn into the future scene, similar to what happened to the protagonist in the movie Tron. By imagining themselves living, breathing, and feeling the anxieties and experiencing all of the other nitty-gritty that is happening to the characters expressed in the future scene, it is hoped that the team member will be in a position to imagine interesting and creative challenges that are posed by this future scene. When each individual has completed their individual analysis, the team members should then have a group discussion. Going around in a circle, each team member can indicate one of the individual challenges which that individual has jotted down after they first read the future scene, and the other members can provide input as to whether such challenges fit within the topic area and address the portion of the future scene. At this time, team members can throw out duplicates since evaluators will not score a duplicate challenge. During this group discussion, team members are encouraged to brainstorm and think of other challenges which come to mind as a result of the group discussion. If possible, challenges which can be tied into prior research tend to get higher scores. No credit is given if the challenge does not fit within the last paragraph's directive, does not address the topic for the future scene, or is not related to the actual factual portion of the future scene set out in the future scene. In addition, no credit will be given to a challenge which is expressly posed in the future scene itself.
For a challenge to get credit, it must contain all of these elements. 1, it must clearly associate itself with a factual portion of the future scene. 2, it must clearly describe what is the nature of the challenge posed by these facts. And 3, it must also describe why that challenge is a problem. This latter criteria is often a vehicle which will allow the person writing the challenge to steer the challenge into one or more of the topics. Let's look at a challenge which could have been used by a middle school team in the qualifying State Bowl. Here it is. The president of Taipur says that the young fall prey to technology's pointless games. Research indicates that gaming can actually build social skills in children, as well as critical thinking skills of strategizing and managing complex tasks. Limiting the personal choice of the youth of Taipur by outlawing the use of AI could cause the youth to fall behind their global counterparts in the field of artificial intelligence technology. This might make it harder for them to find good jobs in this area when they grow up.
Note how in expressing this challenge as written, the challenge incorporates all of the 3 elements which Beverly expressed were necessary in order for the challenge to be given credit. Beverly had said that the first element was that the challenge must clearly associate itself with the factual portion of the future scene. Note that this was accomplished as follows, and here I am requoting the relevant portion of the challenge. The president of Taipur says that the young fall prey to the technology's pointless games. This sentence clearly ties back to the president's broadcast as expressed in the second to last paragraph of the future scene.
Now note how this challenge, as written, expresses the second element, which was that the challenge must describe the nature of the particular challenge. This element was set out in this challenge as follows: limiting the personal choice of the youth of Taipur by outlawing the use of AI could cause the youth to fall behind their global counterparts in the field of artificial intelligence technology. Now note how this challenge, as written, expresses the third element, which was that the challenge must describe why that challenge is a problem. This element was set out in this challenge as follows: this might make it harder for them to find good jobs in this area when they grow up.
Also note that this challenge incorporates the following other features which enable the evaluators to provide it with higher credit. It clearly deals with the future scene topic, and it addresses the charge in the last paragraph of the future scene. In its second sentence, it references some of the research that the team has previously done which is applicable to the future scene. Evaluators are always impressed with that. The last sentence also makes it clear that the challenge will impact one of the FPS target categories, which is business and commerce.
Let's now turn to step 2, which involves writing out an underlying problem derived from this future scene. This step can be tricky and is often the most important indicator with regard to whether or not this team will have a successful booklet. Note only, it is extremely difficult to produce a well-written underlying problem, but substantively, this underlying problem will set the parameters for the solutions in step 3, so that if there is a poor choice made in the selection of the underlying problem, the team will have a difficult time in being able to successfully produce a variety of good solutions in step 3. Here are the various elements that must be included in the step 2 underlying problem. 1. A conditional statement, which is usually in the form of a sentence that accurately restates certain facts set out in the future scene, which were the basis of one or more challenges previously described in step 1, and it will be the basis for the question posed by the underlying problem. 2. A key verb phrase, which usually starts with "how might we," which sets out one approach for how each solution is intended to accomplish solving for the challenge or challenges posed in the conditional statement. But note that if more than one approach is identified, such multiplicity will result in significant score reduction and create issues with regard to how these solutions in step 3 will be scored. But more on that later. 3. A purpose which sets out a measurable goal with regard to how successful the impact of each given solution set out in step 3 is in fact measured. 4. The following parameters: topic, in this case propaganda, time, in this case 2035, and place, in this case any of Typor, Typor's Public Relations Department, or the Office of Communication.
In addition to evaluating whether the parameters described by Beverly have been included in the underlying problem, evaluators will also be grading each underlying problem with regard to its qualities with respect to focus and adequacy. In general, for this purpose, focus evaluates the overall scope of the underlying problem and whether its implementation appears to be plausible and manageable. In particular, evaluators look for whether or not the underlying problem achieves the following additional parameters. Does the UP appropriately address the charge given in the last paragraph of the future scene? Has a measurable goal been set in the purpose? Does the UP have a definite impact on one or more of the material challenges posed by the future scene, while at the same time not broadly covering all of the challenges posed by the future scene? Has absolute wording been used in the purpose? That's bad. Does the UP address challenges which relate to the topic? Is the goal in the UP clear? Is the UP derived from a challenge or a cluster of challenges generated in step 1? And most importantly, does the UP address the directive contained in the last paragraph of the future scene?
In general, for this purpose, adequacy evaluates the importance, significance, and merit of the UP and its impact on the future scene. In particular, evaluators look for whether or not the underlying problem achieves the following parameters. Is the underlying problem significant? In describing the underlying problem and/or its goal, were any assumptions set out in the underlying problem clearly logically derived from the facts set out in the future scene? And will solving the underlying problem with solutions in step 3 have a positive impact on the characters and/or issues posed by the future scene?
So let's think about an example of what might be utilized in formulating an underlying problem for this future scene. As we have seen, to get a higher score, evaluators will look for a UP to address one or more significant challenges posed by the future scene, which will have an overall significant impact on the characters or issues posed by the future scene. For the qualifying State Bowl future scene, for instance, an underlying problem which attempted to address or correct the propaganda tactics used by the president of Taipur when addressing its citizens with regard to the law banning propaganda would draw a particularly high score. Let's look at an underlying problem that might have been proposed by a middle school team at the qualifying State Bowl. Taipur's president applied propaganda techniques such as stereotyping and fear when he addressed his country's citizens about banning the promotion of AI. How might we in Taipur in 2035 counteract political disinformation about AI so that subsequent political decisions made by Taipur citizens can be based on logical analysis of the situation?
Let's see how this UP contains the necessary elements that are needed in a UP. The conditional statement. Note how this UP contains the following conditional statement, which references key facts and challenges posed by the future scene. Taipur's president applied propaganda techniques such as stereotyping and fear when he addressed his country's citizens about banning the promotion of AI. Parameters. Note how this UP references the future scene topic, propaganda, the time when the future scene is occurring, 2035, and the place where the future scene occurs, Taipur. The key verb phrase. In this UP, the key verb phrase is, how might we in Taipur in 2035 counteract political disinformation about AI? Note how this key verb phrase is only suggesting one approach to be used in the solutions that will be set out in step 3. And a good way to confirm that there is only one approach is for the team to avoid using the word and or the word or, which usually indicates several different approaches. Also note how the verb that is used in the UP, which is counteract, does not require that this approach lead to a full solution that encompasses all of the individuals and or other relevant issues posed by the future scene. And purpose. In this UP, the purpose is so that subsequent political decisions made by Taipur citizens can be based on logical analysis of the situation. Again, note how this phrase only requires one goal to be achieved. And again, a good way to confirm that there is only one goal is for the team to avoid using the word and or the word or. Also note that if someone wanted to determine the degree that a solution responding to this UP is successful, this purpose is designed to allow someone to be able to measure the degree of such, and a full solution involving all of the Taipur citizens is not required.
It is important that the UP addresses actions taking place in the future scene, and that those actions relate to both the directive in the last paragraph of the future scene, as well as the topic that the future scene is dealing with. In addition, the UP should not require solutions that go beyond the scope of the challenges posed by the future scene, and in particular should not directly address the charge set out in the last paragraph of the future scene. This UP successfully addresses all of these requirements.
Let's now turn to step 3, which involves writing out in a statement form definite proposals to address the key verb phrase and purpose posed by the underlying problem. Any step 3 solution which does not address both the key verb phrase and the purpose will not receive a score. In addition, the solution must also be consistent with the directive contained in the last paragraph of the future scene, and must also deal with the topic on which the future scene is based. If the underlying problem has no purpose, the evaluator is supposed to impose a purpose that seems logical to the future scene. And therefore, if the solution fails to address this purpose, which is imposed by the evaluator, then it will not be scored. In a similar vein, if there were more than one key verb phrases or more than one purpose set out in the booklet's UP, then the evaluator is supposed to select a single key verb phrase and a single purpose, with the effect that if any solution fails to address the selected key verb phrase or the selected purpose, then such solution likewise would not be scored.
Each solution is also scored to see if it is entitled to receive an elaboration point. And to do so, it must contain answers to at least 3 of the following critical questions: who, what, how, when, where, and why. Usually, for the solution to be complete, it will be addressing the questions of who will be devising the implementation of the solution, what is the solution, and how does the solution work, so that it solves the underlying problem. However, simply providing answers to these questions will not be enough if the solution itself does not specifically address and solve for the actions required in the key verb phrase and purpose of the underlying problem.
Let's look at a solution that could have been suggested by a middle school team involved in the state qualifying bowl, which is, in the year 2036, designers of A1DA will release globally their new version of their product, A1DA-SI. The A1DA-SI will be interactive with their human clients and engage in conversation rather than enforce ideas into the user's head. By allowing the client to talk about their concerns, as well as allowing them to put forth their own views, while at the same time listening to all of the background facts concerning the issue, reflecting both the applicable pros and cons, the client will be able to develop their own views and perspectives with regard to the issues, so that they will be able to make decisions with the help of AI-DSI, and because it is attempting to manipulate and force the client to make such a decision.
Note how this solution specifically addresses the key verb phrase of the UP, which is, how might we counteract political disinformation about AI? This solution will provide the users with the full scope of information about an issue, including the pros and cons. In addition, this solution addresses the purpose of the UP, which is so that subsequent political decisions made by the Type 4 citizens can be based on logical analysis of the situation. Again, it appears that this solution is successful in addressing this purpose, since it will allow the human user to learn all of the facts and then be able to engage in a conversation which will result in the user making a thoughtful decision as required by the purpose.
In addition, this solution successfully contains answers to 3 of the important questions discussed earlier. In this case, who, what, and how. With regard to who, the solution tells us that the designers of AI will release globally their new version of their product AI-DASI. With regard to what, the solution tells us that AI-DASI will be interactive with their human clients and engage in conversation rather than enforce ideas into the user's head. With regard to how, the solution tells us that by allowing the client to talk about their concerns, as well as allowing them to put forth their own views, while at the same time listening to all of the background facts concerning the issue, reflecting both the applicable pros and cons, the client will be able to develop their own views and perspectives with regard to the issues.
So today, Beverly and I have taken you through the first 3 steps of the FVS six-step process used in completing booklets for each future scene. In the first practice future scene that your teams will be working on, each team will only be asked to complete the first 3 steps. If you can master the principles set out in this video and then teach them to your team should be very, very successful. And so we know that we've provided you with a lot of material today, but we hope that you will be able to look at and rerun this video several times so that you will be in a position to be a terrific coach to your teams and allow them to reach their potential. Beverly and I want to wish you the best of luck with your future problem-solving endeavors. Thank you.